Anunay Gupta. I currently run a company called Xcelyst Partners. It's a startup. The best way to describe myself would be as a lost soul. I've done many things over the past many years, 3 decades right now. I spent time in corporate life. I've spent time starting and selling companies and starting a new one this year. And I also do farming, right? I also have a small farm that I spend time on. I like to get my hands dirty, right, and do things on my own and build things and create things, right. So that's the best way to describe me. My corporate career, obviously, I spent many years in banks, starting at Amex, almost 3 decades back, then at Citibank, HSBC, and JP Morgan. My last stint at JP Morgan just ended early this year. I exited JP Morgan as the head for the credit risk and fraud risk teams in India. And this was a few months back. To me, leadership largely is about getting simple, ordinary people to actually do some really tough things, right? How do you make them owners of what they're doing? How do you make them feel that okay, this is their baby, right? And not give them the credit, right? Having ordinary people do extraordinary things, right? So I think that in a startup, in an entrepreneurial environment, becomes critical. We need to be very cognizant of leaders versus managers. One thing I've noticed is that we are very good managers, right?
Right.
And but leadership traits are still missing. How do you navigate the complex hierarchies and and people, right? How do you communicate, in that environment? So some of those skills I think are so critical, and I think colleges today are getting there, but still not getting there, right? So it is still, we are still teaching students about hard technical skills, right? We are not doing much on the other part, right? So I think some of those skills are becoming much more important these days. Leaders have to definitely inspire,
Yes.
and they have to have a strategic vision. There's a saying, people don't leave companies, they leave the managers. A key task of leadership is to define the culture, right? Task based leadership, I think, doesn't work these days, or has never worked, right? It might work in the short term, but in the long term, it fails. Careers are built over decades, right? Not in a year, a couple of years, giving them the ownership, the inspiration that this is what they need to own and do it themselves. Good leader actually creates good leaders, right? So they don't create managers, they don't create followers, I would say, right? Culture, I think, is so critical that companies can actually survive or die because of it. I think value-based rewards, I think it's very tough to implement. Consulting entrepreneurship, you are pretty much your own boss. Corporate environments, it is a bit different. It is much more structured, right? So the freedom to innovate or to kind of try things on your own is a lot limited. Risk taking, I think you can do it in both kind of environments, corporate as well as consulting entrepreneurship. But I do feel that you might have more opportunities to take a risk in a smaller consulting entrepreneurship based environment. Getting complacent and staying in a comfort zone for for a long period of time definitely, I think, becomes a risk, right? Key thing is to take a risk somewhere in your life. Surround yourself with the right ecosystem,